Again, what a blessing this is for me to celebrate the Eucharist with all of you. And again, I thank you for your strong Catholic faith and also for your patience and your love for the church. Know how much that encourages me as bishop. As one family, we walk together, and we know the Lord will provide. We hope and we know that's founded in His promise. So thank you for that enduring love you have for the church. This spring, on a beautiful afternoon, around noon, I left my house, which is right across from the diocesan offices, and I went across the street, and I thought I'd be there for 10 minutes. Well, I was there for over an hour, and I didn't lock my door. I just left it open. Maybe like your community here, you leave lots of doors open. Well, when I came back, I saw a pair of legs looking inside my refrigerator. And I was thinking, it must be one of the priests from next door. Tomorrow, Father Jonathan's coming to do the 10 o'clock Mass here. And I thought, and maybe he's borrowing from my refrigerator. And I thought, that's great. So I called out his name, and then the refrigerator door closed, and it was a homeless person. And he looks at me and says, "You don't have anything to eat in your refrigerator." I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm gone a lot, and I haven't been to the store. And then he looks at me right in the eyes, and he says, "You'd probably like me to leave right now, wouldn't you?" Well, you know, that's that moment, isn't it? That's the moment of grace. That's when you find out, it's hearing the gospel today, whether or not it's gotten into my heart or into yours. Because I could hear Jesus saying to me, when you give a banquet, don't invite those that are going to repay you. Take care of the people who can. And be grateful that they can. So I said to him, how about this? I said, people tell me that I make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich east or west of the Mississippi. Then he looks at me with eyes of love, and he says to me, I'm allergic to peanuts. I said, how about just the jelly? Then once again he looks at me and he says, you'd really like me to go now, wouldn't you? Well, as you know, homeless people, their lives have so much in the way of pain. They've lost, many of them, their family members. They've had very serious problems, sometimes emotionally. And so I said, no, come on and sit down. And as you know, people who also struggle, and their lives have been so difficult, they don't have a lot to talk about. Most of us can pull out pictures of our families. Most of us can talk about our job or where we live. What do you do when you have none of those things? In fact, everything he owned was in a plastic bag that he carries with him from place to place. So we sat, maybe long periods of silence, but I kept asking, not to intrude, but to let him know he was the most important person because he is to God. You see, the homeless, the poor, the crippled, all of those who are going through difficulties, Jesus tells us in the gospel today, they're the treasures. They're the real treasures. And you'll know when you find them, when you begin to give of yourself. You know, I probably would have liked to just given him a few dollars and just hope he'd go. But that's not what God wanted me to receive. which is to receive from his heart and to listen. He was a Vietnam veteran, came back to our country, back at a time when there was not the welcome for our military. He told me he lost everything, and because of drugs, his family too. On the way out, he says to me, Mother's Day is coming. And he asks me, do you know what Mother's Day is? And I said, of course I do. And he said, this year, they've given me an invitation to join them for Mother's Day. He said, will you pray that I don't mess it up? Because I haven't been invited for years. Well, you know, that peanut butter jelly sandwich, just the jelly, and a cup of coffee, was suddenly for me the gold I could have given him to let him know how important he is. I still see him as he left my house and gave me that wave, because I knew I'd never see him again probably, but he'd always be in my heart. See, that's the moment of how we encounter Christ in the surprises of life. The people we don't expect, the time that we don't really have to give, when perhaps the resources are more than we could ever raise. Yet in those moments is when the Lord invites us to touch another human being with love. I can't fix everything in this world. Only God can. But what I can do is to be an agent of his love along the path and along the journey. Jesus says to us, be grateful that every act of kindness you do and I do for people who can't repay us, one day will be repaid after death in the resurrection of the just. I like to think, and I'm sure for every person you've ever helped, every hospital bed you've stood at, every person dying whose hand you've held, every poor person, every homeless, those who are sick, those with disabilities that you've shown love for, that one day they'll be the ones after death to welcome you into the resurrection of the just. Your repayment will be great in heaven.